And so I'll be giving a lightning talk next, and in particular telling you a little bit of some of our work in AI and surgery towards bringing AI into the physical world. I'm an assistant professor of biomedical data science here, and my lab's research focuses, broadly speaking, on developing AI capabilities for reasoning over biomedical imaging data. And so this direction I'd like to talk about is focused on AI for interpreting, automated interpretation of surgical videos, and with the goal, the potential of, in the future, being able to build AI and surgeon collaborations towards helping surgeons be able to improve surgical technique and ultimately patient outcomes. And so, this body of work that I'll be talking about is all developed in collaboration with this wonderful group of surgeons that you can see here, many at Stanford, and then also externally as well. I want to start off by highlighting that surgery is a procedural discipline where the outcomes are really highly dependent on the technical skill of the surgeons. And that's something that is visible kind of physically and is oftentimes captured through video. So this can be in laparoscopic video, which these are procedures that are video-based by default, for example, or sometimes even in open surgeries, traditional open surgeries, surgeons have recorded videos and reviewed them to be able to kind of manually assess and to try to improve technique and to be able to view other surgeons' technique as well. And so this kind of just shows the importance of technique, of improving technique, and also the type of visual data that captures a lot of this. And so I think this is an opportunity where AI could potentially come in, especially with its ability to perform large-scale, automated, essentially watching many videos, far more than any human could potentially watch, and to be able to synthesize insights and information across all of these. And so this leads to this question of whether AI might be able to therefore develop these capabilities and then be able to collaborate with surgeons to enhance their surgical technique. But I find this problem, this challenge, a particularly challenging one and interesting as a result, because there doesn't exist a lot of this type of data, let's say, out there, whether on the internet, even data that is collected or recorded of surgical videos themselves, and in particular, surgeons' perspectives on that data. So we have many expert surgeons who have developed a lot of skill over time, but these are all often developed in this kind of over a lot of experience that may not be coded in something written down. It's probably not fully on the internet. Even any particular trainee surgeon only has access to what they are able to accumulate from more expert surgeons they've interacted with, or have had the opportunity to see. And so I think this is this really interesting challenge of, as we've had so many areas where we've been able to curate and scrape very large amounts of data and to learn from them, how here we can try to develop very valuable AI capabilities, but in settings where we have much less sort of data that is existing and available for these purposes. So this is a goal, however, that is has been broadly recognized, and many groups, including ours, have been working towards. And so, this is just some of our earlier previous studies. We've shown the early promise of if we could use AI to extract metrics from video, could they be meaningful? And so you can see in this example here that. That if we can use AI to just be able to track hands and their movement here, you can see looking at velocity and pose change, that even just at this very basic level, that you can start to see these differences between the way an experienced surgeon moves and the way a trainee surgeon moves. One with potentially more efficiency, kind of this greater tightness here. And we see that these trends do exist over populations as well, as we looked at video clips from a larger number of trainee surgeons versus experienced surgeons. We can see this when we look at other types of metrics like pose change. So this is essentially the distance between corresponding key points over time, and as you can see how they, kind of the trainee surgeon, if you look at the plot on the bottom, is moving their hands a lot more, changing their pose, and so this is also there's a slight plot issue here, but you can see the main information where, again, these types of just very simple metrics already start to separate these groups. And so, towards this direction, trying to get more out of this, we've been moving from 2D tracking to now 3D hand mesh estimation and tracking. This gives us sort of much more robustness and accuracy to work on, and is allowing us to now also have, this is kind of ongoing unpublished work trying to say, can we distinguish the main operators versus assistants? Can we take features extracted from different populations and be able to separate and see kind of separations in terms of a skill at being able to classify expert versus trainee by experience. And then can we look at how the model is making decisions and use that to find particular moments in the video that may particularly correlate with why the model predicted a particular skill category. And so this is some of these ongoing work towards developing additional capabilities here, but what we're now also turning our attention to is how can we think about the deployment side of, can we now take these types of algorithms and think about what's needed to make them sort of useful enough and valuable enough for trainees to be able to use them in a ongoing fashion to help review and understand surgical technique, enhance their ability to understand surgical technique. And so this is a large ongoing project we've had in trying to develop now a software platform that brings together a suite of these surgical AI models that we've developed towards being able to now allow, to make it worthwhile for trainees to actually spend the time to use this and to be able to visualize and look at the AI outputs on their videos and to see if that can be something that they find useful in their day-to-day. And so, this is something where the kind of major model components we've included here is one on, this is tool tracking, so very similar to what we saw earlier with the hand tracking. We focused in particular on a laparoscopic video for this initial platform, just because there is a greater availability of this type of data. And so you can see this type of tool tracking, because this was also sponsored by a large project from the Wellcome Leap Foundation, which was also led by Tom Weiser here at Stanford. We also had access to collaborate with surgeons globally, and so we're looking beyond just tools within the surgical videos themselves, but also at how can we connect and link them to even more kind of low-cost box trainer simulations, so that surgeons in lower resource settings where some of this may even be more useful, most useful, could also benefit from these types of AI metrics. So as we now look at surgeons uploading full videos and being able to assess how their technique is throughout these videos, step segmentation is quite important. So we've developed and have made available models that are able to separate these surgeries into particular steps for easier navigation, for being able to break down analytics by certain parts of the video. We've introduced models for detecting potentially adverse events, bleeding, bile leakage, and thermal injury, which may not all be errors in themselves, but are ways to help, again, be able to navigate videos, to narrow down moments in which there may be warranting further review, comparison with other surgeries, and so on. And so you can see these kind of likelihoods of what may be something worth looking at. We've also introduced meta-competency assessments. These were developed rubrics designed to be as maximally useful through both building off of existing established ratings, but also using new research from our clinical team. And then finally, we're also developing vision language models for providing natural language feedback. So we're training natively video language models to be able to provide feedback on not just assessing technique, but how this could be improved. And so these are the type of data I mentioned earlier is very difficult to collect, but we've been working on large-scale efforts collecting large multi-institutional data sets of thousands of both videos as well as expert feedback. And so this is an example of what this software platform looks like. And ultimately, we are working on releasing all of these soon, in particular, everything kind of open source to be able to help accelerate work on surgical AI together with the broader community working on this. So we plan to release this all very soon. If you are interested, you can also sign up to be just notified when we are going to make these available. And with that, thank you, and happy to take any questions.
As a surgeon, we were always want to admire you guys and see how are you doing. But one thing, what we notice from outside, they're always, we call it surgeons with the guard's hands. Mm-hmm. They can do nothing wrong and they do everything. How do we challenge those guards' hand, like a Michael Jordan's of the world, to become the next Michael Jordan or the next thing? How do we, from these techniques, how do we improve the people who are already improved?
Yeah, so I think one of the exciting things about AI is that you could, if you manage to, start recording and capturing all of this data, look at these, experts, God's hands across, many different places and areas who people may not have been able to watch each other's surgeries. But I think AI can look at that whole breadth and synthesize it and maybe surface to a surgeon for a particular case. There might be something else, you're an expert, but here's another case by another expert that might be interesting for you to look at. So I think it's that breadth that will be useful. Yes.
Hey, Chloe Nobuhara, surgery resident at Stanford. Thank you so much for presenting some of our work.
Main contributor for a lot of this work as well. Thanks, Chloe.
I'm really curious to hear your thoughts as a leader in the community for surgical AI. I see the world of surgical AI as data being the oil and the fuel, and machine learning models being the engine. Do you think that surgeons will purely be in charge of the oil, controlling the resources, the data availability? Or start to look under the hood and tinker with some of these models?
Yeah, so I think certainly on the data front, I think surgeons, obviously are playing a leading role in curating data. And, as we've seen in many other cases, the quality of data and what you use to train the models is critical. So I think that the decisions to be made there, how data is curated, how any annotations are curated, because again, this is an area where there isn't a lot of this data already encoded, and so we do need to, I think, curate and collect data. So it's certainly important, but I think that surgeons in designing what and how, in what way these models will, truly form collaborations with surgeons, I think there's a lot in the designing how the models will do this, where surgeons are critical. Just to give one example, because this is still a relatively early stage where people are still developing these base capabilities of just can AI interpret these videos, but eventually as we talk about the AI assisting surgeons, whether already offline, but even more so when it gets into the OR, real time and live, when and how these models interact, when do they step in? when do they say something, when do they not, when are they distracting? And I think, especially if you think about during a procedure, if there is some type of real-time assistance, that's even more critical. You do not want to distract someone. You do not want to, certainly cause harm in any case. And so these become very critical questions that are baked into, I think, the design of these models. And so one direction we've been, working on methodologically is also how do you create, proactive models that know when and how to act, to decide how to act. And so the design of these, I think, will benefit from a lot of computer scientist and surgeon collaboration on how this should look.
How do the current models determine the best surgical technique? Do you pick videos from surgeons who have good technique in some other fashion, or do the models themselves figure that out?
Yeah, so currently we use both experience and outcomes as proxies for technique, right? So so ideally, if this surgery led to a good versus a bad outcome, overall, it should be more likely to have good technique than others. Same thing for years of experience. But clearly, that also is not the complete picture because, for example, if you look at experience level, although there's some broad trend there, you can have, much more highly skilled younger surgeons or more experienced surgeons that are, maybe not as strong in a particular type of procedure. And so, I think that beyond this, as we look at sort of larger and larger amounts of data and are able to have a combination of all of these different sorts of weak signals together, that's where we're developing algorithmic approaches to try to synthesize all of that into more richer, more precise signals of technique, ideally, hopefully better than what just even in this data-driven fashion, better than what even kind of rough human eyeballing might be able to do today. So, I think it says it's out of time, so I'm not sure we should. Yes, maybe this should be. I think we're at the end of time, so thank you, everybody.